new process, and they were very quick to respond and say we would get somebody on it. We did close the loop, you know, if that customer got fixed or not. But that's all that I'm aware of that's open right now, or was open. We don't usually circle back to the citizens to find out if they got fixed. We usually do hear from them if they don't get fixed.
I'm just wondering how many just give up.
Some do. And that's why the paper is so important and everything. And the reason this came to a head now, just for the minutes, is that Lumen CenturyLink is selling their landline business in this area to another company called Connect Holding, who will go by the name Brightspeed. And so when that transition was happening, everybody ganged up on both of them at the SCC and saying, before you allow this sale, you make sure this new company has their ducks in a row and will fix our stuff.
So Brightspeed will replace CenturyLink.
Connect Holding is which is owned by Apollo.
One thing I have noticed driving around is there's a lot of boxes on their side.
Wires down too.
And I don't know what damage that does if the box is still a solid box versus one that's, cut all the way.
It's hard to see. It's mobile.
Ms. Donahue, is there something you can put in the paper to actually have people that are having trouble to?
But the newspapers have been good partners to let people know that there are these issues, and please do, if you have issues, call administration, and that's the message we keep trying to pass out. One, get a service ticket every time. I know it's frustrating, particularly people in Harris Hollow, it's on, off, but get a service ticket, that helps for, the phone company, so they can invest in that capital and place the problem. And two, once you get a ticket, and it's been too long, call administration, and we'll go through the escalation process.
But not everybody reads the paper.
Well,
A lot of
they
word of mouth.
might read the online paper, I don't know.
What we may wanna do is, like, contact like Rapid Hands,
Yes.
they have a lot of contact with the elderly.
Yeah, and we've been engaged with them as well.
Aging together and.
We did, when this first really escalated, we did contact different groups, and Janie was helpful with, Lieutenant Jenkins, with Life Alert, because they use, they need the landline as well. If you have the ability, when your phone is down, to use the internet, which a lot of people are, if you don't have the phone, you don't have internet, but the chat function, to me, works so good with CenturyLink, because you get somebody that at least is typing you, and you can type in what your issue is, so it's very clear, both sides, what you're being told, and then you have a time, you have a date, you have who you spoke with at the end of that chat, because they send you the entire, what's it called, chat? Transcript. So it's proof, right? Because a lot of times, in my situation anyway, when I submitted a ticket, a day or two later, I'd follow up to go, where's my technician? And they go, oh, that issue was taken care of. Well, no, it wasn't. Nobody called me, nobody asked, so I've had all that in chat, which was great.
I spoke to somebody yesterday that said what she does, she's over in Smithville. She goes down to the Austin Fort Royal at Ozark 100 and sits there and literally grabs the first person that shows up.
Well, if she has the service ticket, please have her call us next time. We'll use our extra special new escalation process.
All right, CenturyLink. Anybody else? All right. Next item is January winter storms. One of the things that was brought up was doing an after action, which I think is a great idea after any significant event. Several incidents happened, just kind of brief overview from the emergency management office. The biggest out of this, I realize that a lot of people lost power, is that the 911 center lost all administrative phone lines during this incident. We were operating off of one cell phone for a majority of 2.5 days. And at one point, we lost all 911 lines for an hour. So there was a lot of talking with Lumen, a lot of escalation, a lot of Lieutenant Jenkins on the phone on hold for a while. While that was resolved, we realized that that was definitely an opportunity for us to look at in the future, ensuring our redundancy, ensuring our rollover. So we're working through how to test some of that and make sure it rolls over to Warren into our next system. So we have some of that in place, but I'll throw this in after action. One of the biggest things we saw too with the power getting out was water for horses. We had started to have on day 3 farms calling us saying they had no way to get water for their horses. So our backup plan, is let you know, was to have a water truck come in, pay for a water truck, set it centrally, and allow people to come and fill their wagons up or whatever they had with water and take it back to their farms. Thankfully, power was restored to those 2 farms. We didn't need to do that, but again, moving forward, next time we need to put that in our EOP.
Where the water comes from.
You could,
Pool water truck.
you could,
We
you
were-
wouldn't have to call them, Sally, if you could just get with the chiefs or get with,
You don't
it's
have
like we did
horses.
one at Horatio, come through, get with the fire department.
What?
You don't have horses. do you?
What you do, so how would you transport water from the central location? Would you have it
If it's
delivered?
pool water and it's got even a remotest amount of chlorine in it, they ain't gonna drink it.
So it's gotta be drawn from pump?
It's gotta be, well or creek or
Well,
something, spring.
The fire chiefs weren't willing to, because the ice, everything else, they didn't take trucks off the roads. So I've been in touch with VDEM, who recommended the pool water truck. But yeah, I never thought about treated water.
They're not gonna drink it, they gotta be pretty dry to drink it.
Okay.
Probably the other thing we should have been considered too, since so many people there power 4 or 5 days at warming stations and go to the firehouses for showers.
So we had no use. I know people came to Company 3 for water.
Right.
Yeah.
We had 9 residents total go to the shower tower at the wharf,
Right,
and we had 2 residents that wanted a hotel voucher.
right.
And once they were told that we're not getting a hotel voucher, there's a shelter open, they went to the shelter. So what we ended up doing is all the hotels basically south of us and east of us were full. So we ended up getting a block of 10 rooms over in Front Royal, for the extended outage, and they were never used, but we used that as an opportunity. But one of the things we found through this, we talked Rapid Home, we talked with the Benevolent Fund, we talked about all these other partners at the Rappahannock Roundtable, was I met with them, and I'm gonna loop them in on communications from now on. Because they really have the contacts, they know who are sheltered, and they know who can't get out. And we're gonna work with the clergy and the faith groups as well too, to make sure that we push out that shelter information, push out where the warming stations are. As you know, right now, Company 3 and Company 2 are our 2 warming stations. We don't call them shelters because shelter rises to a lot of significant needs as far as opening that. If we do have to open a shelter, right now it's at the high school. That's why during that second incident, you saw the emails, that was letting the chiefs know we had that emergency call. But throughout all this, regular weather reports were sent out to the chiefs, a couple went out to the emergency operations group, and we did have a couple emergency meetings as well, through it to make sure we're on the same page. Some lessons learned was ensuring Station 3 lost phone service, we were unaware of that.
Yeah.
So again, communications, we placed,
And we escalated that.
We did, we escalated it.
It was quick on.
both Verizon and Rappahannock Electric to get power back to the substation that fed the phone lines that fed your station. So they weren't on the critical infrastructure list. So things like that, we were able to bring back online. I think the biggest takeaway that I have from the winter storm is the regional partnership. I think one of the things that we'll always see here in Rappahannock is struggling for resources. We don't have enough people to open a shelter, we don't have enough people to do a lot of things, but if we can pull in the regional assets from Culpeper, from Fauquier, and work together, I think that's how we can accomplish a lot of things for our residents, make sure our residents are served. So I will work on that, I'll have that for our next meeting, an after action report, both at the regional level and at the local level. I'll bring that back for everybody. I do ask if you have any concerns or questions, or if you have something that the constituent told you, please let me know, and I'll look at how we can do it better as well.
Yeah, so Sean, if you could maybe at your meeting coming up, ask for input so that we want things that went well and things that didn't go well, and we'll make sure we get those into the reports, and then if they didn't go well, we can work on solutions, and if they went well, we want to reproduce them next time.
And I hope all the spot reports, I mean, I'd send out spot reports twice a day as far as what the weather is, what's going on. Sometimes more,
Like six.
but
Exactly.
communication's key, I wanna make sure you guys are aware of what's going on.
Start
So-
at 6.
They do start 6 in the morning. Art, do you have something, sir?
Yeah, we had a situation, I live on a private road or a private lane off of, Battle Mountain Road. And back in the February of 2010, when we had the huge 20-inch snow, most of the power on Battle Mountain Road came back. And when it normally does on there, then our power for, I think there's 5 residences and 1 house has 2 power services. But what happened in January was Battle Mountain Road came back within a day and a half, and we still had no power. Well, what happened back in February 2010, there was a utility pole and a transformer across from 600 Battle Mountain Road. And apparently there was a switch up there that did not close.
Fuse.
This was back in 2010. And I suspected that's exactly what happened again. And I was on the phone with Rappahannock Electric, a live person, every day that while we were without power. And finally I reached the point that I called the SCC in Richmond, and I talked to Mr. Oliver and explained to him that what I thought it was this switch, because everybody else had the power back. And about 7:30 that night, we got our power back. And I didn't actually see anybody going up to that address to check on it. But, and unbeknownst to me, Supervisor Kier Whitson was on a conference call with the CEO of REC. And as I said, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that, but he indicated that that was one of the issues, that some of the private lanes where they feed off of a main line, that there were some issues in trying to get the power back. And in any event, Mr. Oliver called me back about 2 weeks later, I guess. He says, I apologize for the delay, but he wanted to know if everything worked out okay. And Kier had indicated to me that in the future, if there's any power issues within his jurisdiction, to let him know, because he's been on the phone with.
Sean and I were on those routine conference
Yeah.
calls, and actually Mr. Hewitt and his team
Yeah,
had a conference call just with us to talk through some issues. They were triaging 80,000 outages at
Oh,
one
yeah,
time.
no
So they were
question.
trying to get 500 on at a
Yeah.
time, and where 6
yeah.
is down the list.
But that was my only concern, because now on either side of me, where I am, fortunately, I get 2 bars off of AT&T at Benvenue. But if any of our neighbors on either side, they've got, I don't know if it's Verizon or whatever it is, but they had no 911
So I
service.
would definitely say in the future, if there's a critical need, just pass it through EOC, or
Yeah.
if we have a virtual, get it to Sean and we'll.
But I think that's, I'm just throwing this out, I think that's a vulnerability, and I'm sure it happens in a lot of, where there's private lanes in the county, where there's one switch that controls maybe 5 or 6.
And REC did say that that's on, I mean, don't take it the wrong way, but that's on the bottom of the list.
Oh, I know.
From the main transmission lines to the primary.
Exactly.
And I never knew this, but it was a great education for us on those calls.
Well, and I explained that to Mr. Oliver, and he said he appreciated the fact that, my understanding of it, and the fact that
Yep.
we're only 5 or 6 people, whereas he had huge outages. But just the fact that this one, now it doesn't happen all the time whenever there's power. When Battle Mountain Road gets the power back, and we usually get ours back. But I think it was just a problem with that one particular switch.
And the other thing that came out of this was a plus is on the private call we had with the CEO, we talked about the map. One of the things you have with RECs, you can see the map of the outages, you go down the polygons. Well, one of the questions that Mr. Curry asked is, well, when I click on a polygon, why can't I go to a more granular level and see really what's happening? And they said, well, that's a feature that we have, we just haven't turned on yet. During the storm, they turn it on. So we can see now as emergency managers, as county administrators, we can get really granular as far as who does and who does not have power. So there's a lot of features available with that. Now, back to Lumen, Lumen does not have that ability. They told us that we had 543 people without phone service. We sent out a rave alert to everybody, and we got about 1,300 bounce back. So we feel the outage of Lumen was much greater than they actually told us it was. But again, so thank you. All right. Flint Hill. I don't know, did anybody not receive a copy of the letter from Flint Hill? Mr. Fraser, did you get a copy of this, sir? Okay.
Excuse me.
Sheriff, do you want?
Well, I don't have a printed copy, but I have access to it.
You want to print it?
Thank you.
It's fresh. Just take it.
And it's in color.
Just take it. It's a sheriff's one, it's her printer.
I still feel it in my pocket.
Let's go down the line. So this letter was read at, Sean, if you want to start, go ahead.
Go ahead. This letter was presented to me at the last association meeting by President Ms. Williams, who's here tonight, and I was requested to read it to the entire association.
So This past Sunday, the board supervisor had a joint meeting with the executive committee from the association. This was brought up, it was asked if that collective group felt it appropriate to forward it to the public safety committee. They all agreed. So that's on this tonight. As Mr. Nick summarized at the association meeting, there's basically 3 asks that were out of this. One was assistance from the other association and companies with staffing, with help, whatever they could provide to Flint Hill. And I'm summarizing. So the second was assistance in completing their EMS license inspection so they could get their EMS license back. And the third ask was for paid staff for their station to ensure the viability of their organization. With the approval of the committee, I know it's out of order to really ask someone to speak during this time, but if there's no objection, I'd like to ask either Ms. Williams or President Williams, Chief Williams to address the committee, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Sean and I had a meeting back, 3 weeks ago with the Williams family. And their EMT lieutenant, Ms. Beth, who's here tonight, and discussed with them the issues they were having and trying to help with assistance in getting through the inspection procedure, with members from other departments. And some questions were raised, in regards to what the company should do or could do to ask for assistance from the county. I know I received, Sean took those questions down, and I received the answers back and replied to you all. And from what I'm saying, you've had meetings since then that I was not involved in. And then today, I have, as I discussed with you, Mike, your email back from the state today, along with another email that comes from the state earlier today. So I guess I would like to ask you, not as the president of the association, but as a member of the public safety committee, what have you all done to correct the deficiencies that have occurred, and what's the plan moving forward?
So far, we had a meeting with Dr. Jinks last night, OEMD, and he was very helpful to us. The biggest problem that we had was the paperwork, the ESO, and the image train, trying to get the image train paperwork over to the ESO, and trying to get the admin rights and the historical documents from image train and ESO. As we all know, we had a bunch of change. We had some members that was there, no longer members, that had admin rights to the ESO and image train, which they had all the passwords, the whole 9 yards. We have recently resolved that problem. Beth, she has the admin rights. She's a super user, and we are currently working on that situation right now. Tawana, she is going to be our entering all of our back reports that was not put in the ESO and the PCR reports. We did get confirmation from Doug Latham that she could do that. So we're going to work on that this week. And try to get ready before March 28th, which is our EMS inspection.
I talked to Doug today, and generally stuff that is entered into ESO, and my understanding is entered by an EMT and an EMT only. However, when he spoke with Dr. Jinks, there is a position that could be created, be called a transcriptionist, where the department could designate somebody as a transcriptionist, allowing them to enter the paperwork into ESO. So my understanding is that the department has the paper copies of it, but the people that ran the calls are not there to enter it into ESO. So as long as everybody is in agreement, I can be the transcriptionist and enter that into ESO. I did send an email earlier today to Dr. Jinks and to Doug, both, just so that they would reply back, so I would have it in writing that that was okay. And once that is done, then Beth can create me an ID that, it would be an ID that only I would use in the backlog of the paper copies right now, all we have is paper copies.
Do you have paper copies for all this?
The paper copies, we just don't have them in ESO. And a lot of that is because you have to, it was told that we had to have an EMT that ran the call, had to be the actual EMT that ran the call to enter it.
The person who runs the call, the officer in charge of that call, as Mike is well aware, is the one to enter it in industry.
Unless, per Dr. Jinks and Doug Latham, I'm sorry, he
Transcriptionist,
yes,
said you could designate somebody as a transcriptionist.
You're the one who needs to put it.
exactly,
I would
yes.
certainly, and I am, well, I would certainly want to make sure my report is right, just like Jason Tate.
Right, and I don't think he's talking, I don't think he's talking about going forward, he's talking about the backlog of paperwork where
Backlog.
we can't, the people aren't there to enter that information.
Why wasn't it put in within 24 hours from the call?
Well, they're not,
That's my question.
you're to ask that question, I guess, so I just volunteered, I've only been the vice president for, what, a month now? But I'm willing to do anything I can to help, so they came up with the idea, I guess, between Dr. Jinks and, Doug, that a transcriptionist could do that to help, since we do have the paper copies, we just need to get it into ESO so it would be compliant for the next inspection. And then going forward, like he said, he's gonna make sure and really, nitpick everything, everything needs to be done correctly, it needs to be very detailed. Not only a call where you would transport a patient, but even the patient refusal, he said should probably be more detailed than where you would transport a patient, so he wants it to be very detailed going forward. He said he's not asking for miracles of what, for calls that are backlogged, but what we have on the paper copy should be entered into ESO in order for us to maintain our license.
From what I understand, in the communication I've seen, Company 4 should be well aware of exactly what you have to do to satisfy the state and to satisfy your medical doctor.
Yes.
A lot of pressure on Company 4 to get that done. And we all want you to do it and are hopeful that you're successful.
Yes. Like I said, we had a meeting with Dr. Jinks last night, we talked, we explained a lot to him. And he understands where we're coming from, and I've been in touch with, Doug Latham, which he has been very helpful. Lisa Palmer from Station 1, she's our new infectious control officer. So, we got the ball rolling.
Mike, just one thing that I can offer to you, working with Lisa at Company 1, the EMS response document that is part of the EMS inspection, that's been revised as of July of 2019. For our inspection in Amosville, I'm going to be sending a copy of that to Jason and to our EMS captain. I will send you or whoever you want me to send it to, because you're going to need to put that in with your EMS inspection. So since that's been revised, I'll make that copy available. I'll send it to you,
Okay.
and then you can distribute it as you need. Among other things that's required on there, and you may already have a copy previously, is a detail of your first due area,
Okay.
as far as geographic.
You can talk to them offline.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll make that available.
Okay, appreciate it.
Mike, I only have one question. So if you got a backlog of paper reports that has been put in as an EMS report for month by month by month that hasn't been entered in the industry yet, if they didn't document it properly on the paper report, because basically the paper report that comes out, it just comes from the sheriff's office, and they put that information on. How are you gonna go in and fill out anything other than your times?
No, there's, in
how are
the
you gonna do
folders,
this? How are you gonna do the
there's
narrative?
specifics of the call, I mean, like the patient care and all that on the form, it's just not entered into ESO is my understanding.
It wouldn't be ESO, we didn't take place in ESO till like a month ago. It would have to be industry in the past.
Okay, well, we have paper copies of it, maybe it's not in
Yeah,
insurance,
I think
right,
there's gonna
Mike?
be limited information on the paper copies.
Right. It's very limited.
Dr. Jenks last night spoke to, a hypothetical, he got busy in the ER and did not get a patient report in, and someone from billing calls him 2 months later. He will put in a patient report, it will not be the same as if he'd done it within
Correct.
24 hours, but he puts what he knows to the best of his ability and simply states, it happened 2 months ago and the report wasn't done on time, blah, blah, blah. And I was not privy to on this conversation with Gerald Layton, but I'm assuming that they are willing to overlook some of the patient data,
So
perhaps?
I would say, at the end of the day, your license is between the company for and Office of EMS. And, if you can satisfy the state and you can satisfy your medical doctor,
Right,
then I guess you'll have a license. And if you can't, you won't.
correct.
It's pretty simple.
And I don't know what the paperwork says, because I didn't learn until today that there could be somebody deemed a transcriptionist that could enter this work. I've never seen the paperwork because,
It's not very many.
How many's there been? 5, 6, 20?
Between the, I mean,
Well, a lot of calls that we
Place
were
and
placing service, so we can't.
And that's- with the patient reports, those are mostly put in ESO. Placed in service before responding or placed in service before arriving on location. That's the ones that's.
So you never actually had patient contact?
Right.
Right. You gotta do it before.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
yeah,
And
and he
we-
stressed that yesterday, that we needed to enter, even if we just did like a lift assist, that you needed to put in that you did a lift assist, or you responded for manpower.
And going forward, we're making policies now where if this don't happen, well, first offense, this is gonna happen. Second offense, this is gonna happen. Third offense, sorry. So,
So as has been the case for a little while now, force not being dispatched on EMS calls, that'll continue until, we hear from the state that you're straight with them and your medical doctor, you're straight with him.